Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnackit.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. I am Jeff Sharon along with Eric Lopez. We have a busy show for you today, even though we are well past the spring equinox. Now we still have lots to talk about. As we Eric, we're starting to transition into off-season mode a little bit.
Not so much, because are you ready for some spring ball? Yeah!
Well, once we get hey, listen, we got spring football. We got the spring game on Saturday. We're going to talk about that. Terry Mohajir talked to the Orlando Sentinel. They asked him a lot of really important questions. We got some pretty interesting answers, so we'll break that down. Also, what else is going on with the basketball program? Darin Green saying goodbye, heading into the transfer portal. And of course, Bryson will be by later to talk some baseball and softball, who are getting off to very good starts in conference. I know the softball team, Eric Lopez, you must be very happy with how that's going right now.
That's where we're all in, but hey, we don't even have George Brett commenting on our program, unlike baseball.
Yeah, you can cross that one off the bucket list, but or stating that he could beat Greg Lovelady out of a dugout. But anyway,
just a typical Sunday baseball, evidently.
So we've got that, plenty more to talk about. Follow us at UCF_SBN on Twitter, also Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. By the way, thanks to you, Eric, for and Bryson for captaining the ship while I was away, getting 4 holes drilled into my skull from my wisdom teeth operation last week. I still got. Okay, you people have had your wisdom teeth taken out. Nobody told me about how the fact that, like, apparently standard operating procedure is if a tooth breaks, you know, when they're trying to extract it, they just leave the broken piece in there, and then eventually it just falls out, apparently. I got that going on, like, right now, but it hadn't fallen out yet, and it's freaking killing me, man.
Like, I apologize for those that are listening to the show while eating.
Well, first of all, most people listen to this when they're driving anyway, but, like, oh, my God. Oh, God. Like, I should buy stock in Tylenol.
Are you saying the PA work is taking its toll here? Is this...
No, listen.
Do we know to go to the bullpen here?
Am I sensing early retirement?
No. Listen, I play hurt, all right? The only reason I missed the Space game last week was because I was actually physically in the hospital, all right? But I'm playing through pain here, all right? The training staff, they got me taken care of.
Sounds to me like Kyle Nash better be ready in the bullpen on Saturday.
Andrew Klukas is going to join us to preview the spring game along with Kyle Nash. They both join us now here on the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Good evening, gentlemen. We actually got you both here at the same time. Please keep it civil.
I would say that's the dangerous thing, putting him and I in the same podcast. Usually, hijinks ensue afterwards.
Hey, we've been well behaved compared to our normal old bickering married couple. I want to hear all that.
Let's not start right there. Okay, you've only just gotten onto the show. So
challenge accepted.
Let's talk about the spring game and Kyle Nash. I'm going to talk to you first because Drew interrupted me. The spring football game. What are we really looking for here? I mean, it's obviously spring games are, not what they used to be. They used to be like an actual kind of sort of game to take the edge off a little bit, like back when we were kids. Now they're just glorified practices. We put the ones over here, we put the twos over here. Maybe we'll try some fun stuff. But really it's kind of like opening presents on Christmas Eve a little bit. It just takes we're probably going to see, obviously we're going to see John Rice Plumlee. We might see Thomas Castellanos. We're going to see some of the, we're going to see the new and improved Mikey Keene at quarterback. I think that's what pretty much everyone is looking forward to the most, right?
Yeah, Keene and Castellanos are going to be your big draws, for your your ground level casual fan. I mean, it's adorable that you see a quarterback in full contact in a practice in this time of year, in that amazing run they put up on Twitter where he shook Saliskar and then took it to the hizzy. What was it? At least 60 yards. But the fact that Plumlee was in full contact mode should tell you everything you need to know about where he is on the depth chart. I think we're led to understand at the moment that, the smart money is on Castellanos and King being your top two competitors at this point. Of course, this is me mostly speculating.
Ooh, wow.
So, take that where it is. Oh, I'm seeing uh-ohs from Lopez.
I don't know about that. Well,
All right.
It's a little, that could be a little misleading, but go ahead.
Well, no, yeah, I'm saying remember, just because, my take on where they are in the depth chart right now is thus, A, I'm talking about practice about a week ago, and B, it certainly doesn't reflect anything that'll be happening towards the fall. So let's be clear there. I'm talking purely going into the spring game. And, I've been in a position to call out who the starter will eventually be in the fall, as I did with Dillon Gabriel that year when I called him beating out Brandon Wimbush. How good that is or how omniscient that makes me is another question. But I say all of the above to say, obviously Mikey Keene and Castellanos, watching those guys play is what the fans are going to be there for the most. For me, though, I'm going to be watching what happens when they run the football on either side for the ones and the twos. And the reason for that is A, that running back room is deep as heck. And B, I want to see how much that young linebacking core is developing. Because, gentlemen, I'll tell you what, if there is to be a concern, it would be at the linebacker spot on defense, getting everything tooled up and back to where it should be, because they are a very young squad.
Drew, what are you looking for?
Well, Kyle mentions the Plumlee run. I was not impressed by it because that's what he does.
Yeah,
that's expected. I don't care about his running ability because I already know what he can do. I want to see him throw the ball. I want to see him accurate because that's where he hurt as a quarterback.
Yeah,
why he was removed as a quarterback and moved to wide receiver. It's because of that throwing action. No one could doubt the athleticism, speed, and agility of John Rice Plumlee. I mean, he is just a burner, and if they can get the passing accuracy there, he becomes the complete package.
Real quick, Drew, let me cut in. I'll even add this. I'll make another prediction now that'll curl Elo's nose. I think it's more likely that Plumlee becomes a punt returner than a starting quarterback.
And you know what? That
you guys are
maybe not this year. I think maybe not this year, but that could potentially happen in the future. It really depends on the development of Castellanos. He's the X factor. I'm not a big fan of starting freshman quarterbacks. The thing with Dillon Gabriel, it was almost expected. As you know, Kyle, I was very much against the Brandon Wimbush transfer. We already had a guy who couldn't hit the side of a barn. Why do we need a second one?
Oh, no.
The numbers speak for themselves. So if Castellanos really just gets it going, you could see some deep quarterback competition. You mentioned the linebackers, and I agree. This is a definite position of question. And UCF brought in a couple of transfers I'm really interested in seeing. Now, Jason Johnson from Eastern Illinois had a very good season last year in the Ohio Valley Conference. And the big guy, and that everyone's wondering about, and how he mends and how he adapts is Terrence Lewis, the transfer from Maryland, who was a 5-star recruit going into high school, or coming from high school rather. So I mean, this guy has a lot of hype. The question is, how is he going to play after recovering from this injury? So I agree with you. The linebackers are a real big question mark, and definitely an area that we want to pay attention to. I think the offensive line is also a thing. Depth is an issue. Put Matt Lee in bubble wrap, because if he goes down, again, I said this last year and I'm saying it again this year, there is no real good depth at center because if Sam Jackson is playing as your second center during spring practice, you have a problem because he shouldn't be at center. He should be somewhere else on the first unit. He should be playing. Don't put him at second center. That just shows there's a problem here.
No, I don't think anybody would debate that. And as a real quick, Jeff, listen, if you think me calling Plumlee a potential punt returner is going to get anybody in trouble, we have a few famous punt returners that are pretty well enveloped in the annals of positive UCF history, right? I mean,
John Rice Plumlee did not come here to return punts.
Maybe he didn't, but he certainly doesn't look like he came here to pass accurately from what we've seen so far. But the spring game, he'll have the opportunity to clear it up. Go ahead, Eli.
I also want to point out that the spring game is more about fan service. You talk. I think what was the comment about opening the gift a little bit early on Christmas, and this young Jewish boy kind of laughs at that. But the truth is, you know it was coming, Jeff. But the truth is, this is all about fan service. This is about giving the fans a taste, putting a little bit of production on. It's a glorified scrimmage. We all know that. Mm-hmm. It's the capstone of the spring football season. The practices and the scrimmages have happened before. But let's call it what it is. They've evaluated a lot. They know what they're going to see. So
Gus should just troll everyone and run the air raid with Plumlee out there.
I would laugh my head off if he ran air raid.
It would be great.
But actually, no, that brings another valid point. One guy I do want to highlight is someone that needs to really show out is Jalen Robinson. This was a guy that last spring game struggled badly adapting to the different offensive style that Gus Malzahn played. As opposed to just burning a guy downfield, he had to focus on agility and shorter routes, which is why Ryan O'Keefe absolutely destroyed everyone during the spring game. I mean, he was one of the highlight guys.
And that bared out in the regular season.
Yeah, exactly. And then, Robinson got hurt. When he came back, he just wasn't the same. And so you've had an off season, you had a chance to heal, kind of hit the reset button. So I think he's going to be one of the focus guys.
Keene too, by the way, Drew, right?
I'm sorry?
Chance to get a chemistry with Keene too. I think that was an issue as well.
Yes. When you're hurt, you're not playing, you can't do spend the extra time running the routes, getting that timing down. Ryan and O'Keefe and Brandon Johnson spend lots of time with Mikey Keene. And replacing Brandon Johnson, that's a big one. You're going to need that extra wideout.
Well, that was going to be my question. That was my question to both of you. We were talking so much about the quarterback. Who are they throwing the football to? I still have the jury out on the depth of the wideouts. We know about Keith. You mentioned Jalen Robinson. I think that's a fair point, Drew. But who else steps up at the wideout position here?
Well, I think Kobe Hudson is a guy that transferred from Auburn. I mean, he was one of their top receivers. In fact, I think he was the team leader in yards last year. He comes from he knows the system. I think he has a leg up on adapting to the slightly variation because obviously no system is the same twice. You have to cater it to the talent and personnel that you have. So I think he has a leg up on others. And then you have guys like Deontay Marks who came a couple years ago from Florida, who's kind of been kind of hanging in that second unit. Amari Johnson, who started to break out at the end of the season. I think there's a few guys that have a chance to step into that number 3 wideout spot. But I think Hudson may have the initial leg up to going into the spring game.
My next question for the both of you, and we can. How excited should we get?
It's spring ball. You should be excited. It's football. We love football.
The conclusions that we can draw will be everyone's going to want to draw conclusions about it, but like Kyle, I know you're like shaking your head like we're not going to be. The conclusions have already been drawn. This is basically the going away party at the end of spring practice.
More or less. I think that's a little. I think that's a little black and white. I'll put it this way. There are people who both watched the X-Files and Lost, okay? Who watched a show to answer questions and then had more questions than they did before once the show was over.
Where's this one going to go? Okay.
So in light of the fact that we have so many questions, we are going to come out, I think, with a situation where this guy did better. No, this guy did better. And because both Castellanos and Keane are incredibly young, we're not going to see them fully develop. Is the offseason, air quotes, particularly over? I mean, the spring is over, but I still think there's still a lot more development and positive stuff they can do in the preseason leading up to that first September snap. So while you think the decision's been made, sir, I cannot agree. I think what we're going to do is we're going to see a lot of guys have both good and bad moments, and people, fans in particular, are going to overreact to both. And I'll see that and raise you this. The other piece is the questions will fly because I think we'll see several running backs shine. I'm not here to tell you that Isaiah Bowser is going to get passed up or anything that ridiculous, but there's going to be guys that show out and do a few things. Listen, we're used to seeing Mark Anthony Richards do his thing too when he gets his time on the field. But if you listen to the running backs coach and that position group and what they can do on the field, the man speaks with a tone and an awe of what he has in his core on a regular basis, man. So when I talk about questions and more questions being posed, I think they will be hype raised from this particular practice, both, I mentioned for the quarterbacks, both for the running backs. And then to Elo's point, if a particular wide receiver shines, if Jay Flash has a big game, the is Jay Flash back narrative will immediately start, that sort of thing. Right. And then again, I can't stress enough, I mentioned the linebackers previously. The D-line also very interesting in that I'm not going to say they're thin, but they're certainly not as deep as they were, and how that will look. And then the DBs are going to be a very interesting group. They have a lot of stuff going on. They had some transfers brought in that were compelling and are going to be a group that could create some buzz themselves. Who the starters will be, I think, is going to be the biggest question and the biggest debate you'll see in the social medias and all of that. And we're not going to have a true answer to all of it until September.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think we're going to have a name a quarterback either. And I think you're going to see, I think we're going to have a 2 quarterback system this year. I disagree with you. No, I'm going to tell you why. I don't think Mikey Keene fits this offense, but it's not a secret. Gus Malzahn wants his quarterback to be able to run. Mm-hmm. That's what he did last year. Let's look back in history. Now he's got a way better version. Like John Riles Plumlee is a way better version than Joey Gatewood. This is like an explosive, dynamic player. You're going to use playmakers. I actually think Plumlee has a legitimate shot to be the starting quarterback, and it would not surprise me if he's the starter by the Georgia Tech game. I think this is going to be a fascinating competition, and it's going to depend on their style. Does Mikey Keene improve his accuracy enough in his arm to offset not having the legs that a Plumlee does? And you guys want to point out Plumlee hit questionable accuracy? Fair. I would point out he was a starter at Ole Miss, including over Matt Corral, and he was making plays. So, and I think it's going to be I think it's a really interesting competition, and I think we're going to be divided starting in the spring game because some people are either going to be really impressed by certain guys in that quarterback room, or they're not going to be impressed. It reminds me of the year when Dylan Gabriel stood out in the spring game, and to your point, Kyle, a few months later, was the starter over Brandon Wimbush.
I mean,
Eric,
was a guy that made a few plays for Notre Dame too coming in. I mean, your point's not bad. That's just, you already know what I would counter with.
Well, not only that, but there's a red flag that has to be thrown whenever a player switches positions, to another position. That means you're not getting in. That's a red flag. No.
I don't agree with that. Yeah.
Let's go down the list. Yeah. Look,
Joey
Gatewood didn't
hold
cut
on,
it at quarterback.
Wait.
He's moved it. Mike Greco didn't cut it at quarterback. They moved it. Matt Corral torched Plumlee as a quarterback, and they moved him.
Whoa.
But hold up.
Wait a minute. Plumlee was the starter over Corral until Lane Kiffin came on board.
Right.
So that's a big let's correct that. He was the starter under the previous staff. Matt Corral doesn't happen if the coaching change doesn't happen at Ole Miss.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Good point, Eric, is that the Matt Corral, John Rice Plumlee thing wasn't because John Rice Plumlee couldn't cut it. It was because Lane Kiffin came in, like the chaos Muppet that he is, and and shook things up.
What?
Oh, hold on. Let's talk about that 2019 Ole Miss team that went 4-8 with John Rice Plumlee as quarterback. He threw for 52% with 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. That is not.
How many yards did he run for? How many yards did he run for in the SEC?
They
best
won
conference in
4
football.
games.
How many yards did he rush?
It doesn't matter if you
Does
lose.
You just grab 1,000-yard quarterback.
No. Wait, I'll tell you what matters. What year was he? Sure.
He was a freshman. They threw him to the Wolves, and then he was put in a system that didn't work for him because it required him to throw more, and he got replaced.
But you're missing the point. He's a playmaker. And coaches want playmakers, and we're not. And he's not.
Well, if he was a playmaker, he would have been on the field.
This coaching staff.
No, he wasn't. He got
They moved him
yanked
to wide receiver
because he wasn't going to be quarterback anymore.
No, because he's a playmaker. That's
Actually, gentlemen, if I may.
Go ahead.
I believe I've answered for this playmaker theory on your behalf, Elo. I did mention the possibility of him becoming a punt returner, and somebody else who returned punts for this team. Very famously, the late Otis Anderson also then became a receiver as well. And then he's also able to get touches as a running back as well. Gentlemen, I pose to you that the chances for Plumlee to be a playmaker on this squad, to Drew's point, isn't taking snaps. And the only reason why he won't run the ball like Otis used to is because that running back room is damn deep. However,
that's the strongest unit on the team by far. The guy that no one's talking about that I think could end up being the second guy on the team is RJ Harvey, who tore it up in the last year's spring game. Got hurt.
Let me hand you the ball back after this. I really think that Plumlee has a better shot of being Otis Anderson light, because he won't run the ball as much because of dudes like Harvey and others. But I think he has that playmaking potential. But talk more about Harvey, please.
Well, he's a physical freak. From a physical standpoint, he's the best guy in the roster from a running back standpoint, physically speaking. That he was just absolutely dominant in the spring game last year. What hurts him, aside from the fact he's recovering from injury, is his lack of experience. Most of these running backs have been doing it most of their lives. He, came as a quarterback, switched over to running back, and that was his first soiree at running back. So he's still got a little bit of experience that he's building. But this is a guy that unfortunately got forgotten about because of those injuries.
Right, the injury, correct, right.
I think he's the best running back on the team as far as physically.
If he's healthy.
If he's healthy, and put him alongside Isaiah Bowser, you may not have to run the ball, throw the ball that much. You could focus on the running aspect because you've got such a strong core. But then you have to go back. Okay, can the offensive line handle that kind of punishment? Because run, and Kyle will know this. We'll second this. Run blocking is way more tiring than pass blocking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's not close. It's a more tiring activity, and if you're a run first offense, you have to do it for a lot more of the game. You're not only taking more steps, you're doing it while doing more strenuous activity. Really quick, Drew, just to clarify for me and the people at home, when you mention that Harvey's more physically perfect as a running back, are you talking about as far as his build, being able the right mix of power and speed, or what are we talking about?
Well, I mean, he's just a physical specimen. You look at him, I mean, he's built solid. He's got good physical moves as far as his cutbacks.
He's a little on the small side, 5'8", 195.
But he's a wrecking ball. He's a wrecking ball. You remember watching him last year, Jeff?
I do.
That spring game. He was a literal wrecking ball against that defense.
So
that's what he does. So while you have Johnny Richardson as an outside off tackle speedster on the outside, you have what UCF struggled with was when Isaiah Bowser got hurt, they didn't have a guy that could really establish the inside run, so they stopped respecting it.
Right.
And it wasn't working.
Yeah, the running back position is there's no concerns. I mean, I think
it's a position of least concern. I think it's going to be really exciting because you got so much talent.
Probably the strongest position.
Right. Nice problem to have at this point.
But I do think, and we're going to depend on Kyle's eyes because this will not be broadcasted. I think either Castellanos or Plumlee is going to come out of spring game with buzz at the quarterback position. I think Plumlee will play this year at quarterback. That's where I disagree.
I agree. I think he will too. I think he may not be the guy, but he's going to get time on the field.
Oh, he'll be the new Gatewood. You're right about that, Elo. I'll definitely agree with that.
And I think it could work. I think you got a better athlete here. I think they're going to tweak some things. I think it could work, and I think there'll be a better team for that.
And all
I think what Gus really likes is exactly what's going on right here is us guessing, because that means that the opponents are going to be guessing too.
But
I want to throw out one more thing about my reservations with Plumlee passing. We talked about his freshman year and the issues he had. He actually split with Matt Corral in his second season. He got beat on every statistical category on that, as far as from a quarterback passing standpoint.
Well, here's
lower percentage, lower yards per attempt, less touchdowns. I mean, he threw the ball 28 times less and had as many interceptions. I mean, the writing was written on the wall.
But
Corral was just a better passer, and it became a pass happy offense.
It's also in the SEC. He's in the American.
So
it's a lot easier.
So what you're trying to say is he wasn't good enough for the SEC, so he's getting relegated down the American. No. Don't blow up the SEC's ego any further than they already get.
He could throw for 4 touchdowns
against the Bulls
tomorrow. He could throw for 4 Buckeye. I will say this: Castellanos is the wild card. Do they want to redshirt him, or that's what I'm saying.
You got 4 games out of it. You can get 4 games with the new redshirt rule, so you don't have to really make that decision all that fast.
But I do think part of it.
But I do think this breaking in will play a factor, because Kyle's going to come back next week on this show, and he's either going to say, "Man, Thomas Castellanos is the truth," or he's going to come out and say, "You know what? This guy needs a little time," and that's going to clear up some of the answers there. So no pressure, Kyle.
My hope is that he doesn't have to play. I'd rather have him redshirt.
Oh, wouldn't we all?
That's the hope. I mean, is that the reality?
Hey,
we'll find out.
All goes well. Eric Lopez, you just found yourself a really good nickname for Thomas Castellanos.
Which is?
The truth.
Oh, Lord.
I like it.
Wasn't that Paul Pierce?
I got to propose.
It was Carl Williams.
What? Yeah, there you go.
It was Carl Williams, a wide receiver.
Before him, there was a boxer, Carl the Truth Williams.
I do have an idea how to spice up the spring game. Why don't we just invite South Florida to be like the punching bag in the spring game, since we won't play anymore in there? And really, we could use the nice sweat, nice scrimmage, kind of like we've done on the field in the regulars. Like
other sports they play irregular competition in the off season.
Yeah, they're irregular. All right.
Volleyball beat Florida. Yeah, volleyball beat Florida 4 straight sets last week. So hey. I'm all for it. Why not? Let's go for it. Bring them up here. Come on. All right. Real quick, the schedule for the spring game. The game starts at noon. I was about to say kickoff, but we don't do kickoffs. Although they say it does kick off at noon at the Bounce House. Let's see here. Anything special on this? The students just need to flash their student ID.
Kyle's going to be at the game. It doesn't get any more special than that.
Don't forget the food trucks. Yes, Kyle's going to be at the game.
Dressed in his typical tie.
Dressed in his Saturday best. I'm going to be at the game, of course.
Well, make sure you're
Saturday best, by the way. Stick with that.
Now,
we'll see.
Jeff,
we'll see how much medication I'm going to need to get through that.
Jeff, are you going to have the cotton mouth in your mouth cell? So when
nope.
you talk, you're going to sound like this.
No, listen. I have to go. I have to go gauze free. Like I'm going here today. So far, so good.
Well, and you got to be loud, because I'm going to be at softball, so I need to hear very clear.
Right. Well, that's and that's the other thing is we have a little sports convention going on this Saturday with softball and baseball going on. Hopefully, we can get some spillover. Eric Lopez.
I'm all for it. We'll have to discuss that down the road. Wait, Kyle, we can get you. I'm inviting you to softball. We can free brats, sandwiches, huh?
Oh man!
You got him.
The baseball and the baseball and the softball happen at 2 p.m. So the spring game should be over by then. You catch some softball. Baseball should be fun. Should be a good time.
Maybe I can DoorDash the brats. I don't know.
Now remember, Kyle. I know your feelings about baseball. This is softball. It's not baseball.
Much faster game. And left field line, we have beverages. There's beverages. I can listen. You let me know. You're swinging by. I make a phone call. You're hooked up. That's all I'm saying.
Listen. I know the guy.
Listen to the big time. Wow.
I can't hook you up in baseball.
See, Jeff, that's how you throw your weight around.
That's yeah.
Oh no.
That's how you play your role.
Oh, I had nothing to do with that.
Okay. All right.
On that note,
on that note,
that's a slam dunk ending.
On that note,
segment.
let's take a look at the salary budget for this coming summer. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh wow!
I'm not touching that one.
Drew, you want to stick around and talk?
Yeah, keep him in.
Yeah, we'll talk more. We're going to talk basketball next, and the Terry Mohajir stuff. We're going to bring Bryson in to talk about that as well when we return. Obviously, like we said, Kyle is going to be covering the spring game because we have no streaming video for this. So follow the SOTG on Twitter.
No pressure, Kyle, but you better
all
be on
your
Twitter
for all your UCF spring game needs.
Now, Kyle, if I can do it, you can do it.
Hey, hold up, gentlemen. I'm the one that's known as the god of the GIF in that press box, and you're going to tell me about Twitter. Please.
God of the...
You heard what he said. All right.
God of the gift.
I got to get to this break. Stick around. When we come back, we're going to talk basketball and Darin Green going into the transfer portal, and Terry Mohajir talking to the Orlando Sentinel about basketball and other topics when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We're back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We've got a full house. I'm Jeff Sharon. Eric Lopez is here. Kyle Nash sticking around with us for the second segment. Bryson Turner coming in to join us to talk about basketball. It is a round table. I like this.
I have to apologize. When it comes to gods of the gift, I have to claim that this is a polytheist universe because my dude Bryson Turner's been known to drop down a few lightning bolts himself. Okay.
Wow.
I appreciate that, Kyle. I appreciate that.
Look at the kindness. Listen, he's still a student, Kyle. We need to make sure that he doesn't get his head, blown up too much here. Okay?
I'm still a student, remember?
You're the oldest man in the room.
All right, and there, of course, is Andrew Glukov, who is parachuting in whenever he wants. We'll talk with him in a little bit about a column that he's got up on Black and Gold Banneret here in a little bit. But first, let's talk about some news from basketball. This one kind of hurt to hear. Darin Green Jr. is in the transfer portal. UCF's leading scorer last year, obviously a shooter extraordinaire. Remember, it wasn't all that long ago, guys, we were thinking he would break Matt Williams' all-time record at UCF for three-point field goals. That's not going to happen. Unless, of course, he comes back, which is a possibility. We've seen that before. But he looks to be heading elsewhere, which means UCF at this point, gentlemen, is returning less than 1/3 of its scoring production from the rotation last year. Kyle, we'll start with you here. Catastrophic blow, pretty bad blow, actually not as bad as we think. How do you evaluate this?
No, I think I'm not going to say as far as the pain is. I'm not going to say it's Diamond Battles bad, but it's pretty bad. We could say what we want about him being the top scorer. The reason why he's painful to lose isn't just that, but that production oftentimes, in my opinion, came when the rest of the team would drought and he would just pull one from Dan Marley range and just like, how many times Bryson has seen this happen where I'm like, what are you doing? Don't shoot. Oh my God. Like I'm so trained still from 90s basketball that, shooting from the logo is a definite no. Hey, what do I know? He just swished it again, so I think that element too, when you say he's the top scorer, obviously that's important. But I think that doesn't begin to describe it. Defensively, I'm not going to call him a liability, but he wasn't necessarily the strongest defensive player on the team. But he had his moments where he'd get a steal or two, and get involved in there. Certainly If you're looking for guards playing strong defense, replacing Perry's presence would be more difficult than Darin Green. But as far as an offensive juggernaut and an all-around player, Darin Green's transfer, I think, listen, let's be clear. The program was going to definitely hang their hat on him picking up production for whoever else they'd be trying to develop next year. And now, obviously, 100% gone, spreading the floor now a bigger problem. This takes away from Darius Johnson slashing to the basket. This takes away from CJ Walker working in the post, because now they'll be able to collapse more on those guys instead of worrying about that kick out pass to Green for that beautiful swish.
Well, let's pull this back out for a little bit, because now we have 4 players returning. CJ Walker, Darius Johnson, who you mentioned. Ty Freeman's returning. Jameel Reynolds also returning, at least as of right now.
Right.
You also have a couple of guys coming in. Obviously, PJ Edwards, who's been highly touted, is going to be coming back. And then the Hendricks twins, Taylor and Tyler. Of course, Taylor Hendricks from Calvary Christian. Both of them from Calvary Christian. Taylor, national number 70, 4-star recruit, 6'9" power forward. And this is where I want to bring Eric and Bryson in on this. This is a rebuild. It's not quite to the extent of the women's basketball rebuild. At least you have some tools to work with here, right?
Oh, yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think one thing that really surprised me about this team last season was the emergence of Darius Johnson. But a side effect of that, I think, is that the men's basketball team did not have the identity that the women's basketball team had. I don't know what it was, but something just didn't feel right when you were watching them play. You weren't watching a team working together as a unit. You were just kind of watching these talented individual players doing what they do best. And that's what Darin Green was doing, and so now, though, with Darin Green leaving, that I think that you bring in the Hendricks twins, you bring in PJ Edwards, you have Darius Johnson. I would just say it's the rebuild. You go all in on this young core and the expectations that kind of come with that. CJ Walker will obviously have a very good veteran presence. Ty Freeman, of course, will have some contributions as well. Maybe bring in another big man from the transfer portal. But I think the biggest thing is investing in this young core. And so hopefully the fan base will get that, because I think Dawkins is also invested in them as well.
Edwards is, I think, the key here, right, Eric Lopez? Because he's the 6'4" guy. Looking back on when he signed with UCF a year ago, 6'4" combo guard, rated as a 3-star by Rivals, 17th best player in the state of North Carolina. And Johnny said about him, we're excited to bring PJ in as a member of our family. He's a talented player who will have a positive impact on our program. PJ can come in and defend immediately, and he's a good scorer with the ability to shoot it consistently from 3-point range. We can't wait to get him on campus. So he basically takes that that role. I mean, whether or not he's as good a shooter as Darin Green Jr. was obviously remains to be seen. Darin's one of the best shooters in the country. Darin did have some struggles when the defenses started keying on him last year. So that's another thing to mention. But, where are you evaluating things right now?
It's a rebuild. It sucks. Darin was a great shooter. He is arguably in the conversation for best shooter ever in the program history with Michael Donnell and Matt Williams. Ironically, if this is the end for Darin, his last shot at home was the buzzer beater against East Carolina. That's his last shot as a home game, right?
What a way to go out, huh?
If I'm not mistaken, unless was it Wichita's last? Well, it was one of probably his most memorable shot, if it wasn't his last shot at home. But you don't replace those type of shooters overnight. And, I think Darin, first of all, players, don't announce that you're coming back unless, you're coming back. So him and Diamond Battles announced they were coming back within 24 hours, and a lot of things change, and rightfully, and they moved. And in Darin's defense, look, he's got 1 year left. He wants to get to the pros. I don't think he wants to be a part of the rebuild. Plus, I'm sure somebody got to the people around him. He's a great shooter. That is valuable. I'm sure he will land somewhere. If he doesn't come back, he will land somewhere where they will use him as a shooter at a marquee program where they can make sure he's taken care of, because that's kind of important in today's day and age of college athletics.
Well, 1 week ago, Darin
sent some
Green
subtext in that, but anyway.
actually signed an NIL agency deal with Michael Raymond, who went to the University of Miami Law School. So I would, if I had to bet
about that, let's Michael Raymond's NIL agency. Michael Raymond also graduated from UCF's undergrad too, so there's also that.
Yeah, well, the fact that he entered the transfer portal shows that if he's not going to be at UCF, then I feel like Miami could potentially.
I wouldn't just assume that conclusion. I think he will go where he will be compensated very well.
But I think a good point Bryson does make kind of adds to yours. This movement with the NIL, somebody may have very well advised him for fiscal purposes.
Yeah.
To go.
It's a game changer. Absolutely, this is the new game in town now. That's why we got to stop freaking out when a player moves on. That's the norm now. This is the new era. You're going to get some guys, but you're going to lose some guys. And look, let's be real.
Yeah.
You're probably, if you're Darin Greens of the world, you probably have a better shot to make the NBA. You have a better shot to maybe make some income going somewhere else. And we'll see where he ends up at a, quote, basketball school instead of a school that Darin, pay attention to basketball.
Darin, when he started out in high school, he went to Wharton High School, which is over in Hillsborough County, over in Tampa. His official hometown is listed as Charlotte, North Carolina. I remember his father actually played for George Washington back in the day. Interestingly, he played for my wife's uncle, was an assistant at George Washington at the time. But and knew him pretty well. But I'm sad to see Darin go because nowadays, and Eric, you were kind of touching upon this. It feels like, if you're right now your program's all-time record holder in whatever category it may be, you're starting to think that your records are probably pretty safe now with given the transfer portal.
Well, and this is the
and
problem.
All that,
This is my opinion. The transfer portal is not good for the UCF basketballs of the world. And the reason I say that is I have said for UCF basketball, they've got to make the tournament every 2 to 3 years. That's realistic. The way you do that is by building a team that kind of sticks together. Kind of like you saw with BJ and Taco. You added an Aubrey Dawkins, but the nucleus stays together.
Is that really true, though? Because we only got one season of the three of them on the floor together at the same time. Right?
Well, because they got hurt. They had injuries. They got injuries, but they were around together, though. They were around. Yeah. They were around. Now, the problem is that is hard to do because if you develop a nucleus, guess what? Your players become attractive elsewhere. And I think that's what we're seeing. I remember, Jeff, I think Greg Lovelady told us that was his concern about the transfer portal. He didn't want this to become a situation where, hey, I'm developing players to see them go elsewhere because they, the bigger programs whiffed on them the first time, but they can make up for it now. And that, to me, hurts a UCF basketball more than any other UCF team because I don't believe UCF can recruit at a level with the marquee programs, especially as you're getting into the Big 12. That's going to be a real challenge. They have to build a foundation. I think Johnny was trying to do that, but it's going to be harder with NIL and the transfer portal to keep a group long. And it's not just a UCF issue, by the way. This is a college basketball thing. Like, ask any college basketball person.
College sports thing.
Right, but basketball in particular, because it's a small roster and it's hard. There's constant movement. So you could lose 2-3 guys in basketball. That is significant. In football, you could lose 8 to 10 guys, but you have a deeper roster. Baseball and softball have been used to this. They're laughing at all of us. They're just laughing at how we're overreacting to all this stuff because they've been accustomed to this for a while. I think basketball is the most impacted by this. Look at what some major programs like North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky. Not only now do they have the chance to get a blue chipper, the one and dones, but they can also add experience in the transfer portal, and that makes them stronger. And it takes away from teams like UCF. It's a hard job for Johnny Dawkins. Very difficult. And that's why I said, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I think he has the hardest job on campus right now at UCF.
My counterpoint to that, though, Eric, is not everyone can transfer to North Carolina. There's only so many spots in the rotation. Not everyone can transfer to Duke. Not everyone can transfer to even a school that's on the next level from there, like say a Virginia or a UCLA or a Gonzaga, right? So, the idea that because of the transfer portal, all the good players from the next tier of schools are just going to get hoovered up by the top 16, 20, 25 programs in the country, I don't think takes into account the fact that those schools are already hoovering up the best recruits out there, and there's just no room for these guys. If they want to play, right, they're not going to get that opportunity at those places.
But see, the problem is players always think they can play wherever they go. It doesn't mean they will, but they always get promised that they will play. I've seen this in softball. I've seen this in other sports where they go to a marquee program, they think they're going to make an impact, and then they're sitting on the bench, and then they're wondering, why did I move? So don't assume that people make common sense with that. But look, look at Isaiah Adams. There's reports that Texas Tech's talking to him. So I think Darin's going to get looks. We'll see where he ends up. That'll be the final determination. But remember, in basketball, there's more options. Like the Big East in basketball is relevant. So if you go to Villanova, if you go to Seton Hall, if you go to that's still marquee. Whereas football, it's kind of more cramped. There's more options. So it's tough, man. It's a tough job at UCF, and it's not an easy fix. And I just keep saying that, and people don't want to hear it, but it's a hard job that I think has gotten harder to be successful at UCF because UCF developed Darin Green. They developed him. And now somebody else is going to take him for a year and probably benefit him for a year. Maybe, look, it might work out for him in the long term, but it hurts UCF, obviously. Yeah.
Another loss for UCF, Jimmy Drew, assistant for UCF, has left to take the head coaching job at Lincoln University in Division II. Congrats to Jimmy. So UCF is in the market for a new assistant coach. A couple other transfers that we want to talk about, too, with women's basketball. Obviously, this is old news now, but Diamond Battles did announce that she's going to transfer to the University of Georgia, as did Savannah Henderson, the daughter of Coach Abe, who came in the spring.
She knows the coach, huh? Okay.
Yeah, shocking how that works out. They've gone to the University of Georgia, along with Coach Abe and all of her staff.
No brainer move. As me and
that
Bryson
leaves
said
that
last
leaves UCF with, I think it was what was it, Bryson? 5 players on the roster.
I believe so. The highlight of which is Destiny Thomas.
For now, yeah. I mean, who knows where that's. Who knows what's going to happen with that? I'm not hinting at anything.
Come on. Kyle's been through a lot, all right? Don't get Kyle all riled up now, all right?
But
put on a brave face, Elo.
Suffice to say, both basketball programs, both basketball rosters are in a serious state of transition right now. And what better time for the Orlando Sentinel to reach out to Terry Mohajir and get some questions answered about this. So Matt Rochelle caught up with Terry Mohajir at the bowl season event here in Orlando, put on by Florida Citrus Sports. We guys, right? We saw all throughout the season, about Johnny Dawkins here. A lot of, a fair number of vocal, if a minority amount of a vocal minority of fans who have not been happy with the progress of the basketball program under Johnny Dawkins, despite the fact that they won 7 more games than last year. They asked Timo about Johnny and said, "What's your assessment of the job he has done?" And this is Terry Mohajir's quote: "Johnny keeps having winning seasons. They beat 2 teams in the Sweet 16 and who were in the Sweet 16 and had some injuries at the end of the year. We're excited for Johnny and the future of the program. There's nobody that knows basketball better than Johnny. As a player, a coach, and a high-level athlete, he knows what the Big 12 will be like and how tough the AAC is, and he gets it. So he's got a lot of opportunities ahead of him, and we're going to support him and believe in him." And
hey, wait a minute. Is that a quote from Timo, or is that an Andrew Glukov tweet? I can't tell.
That's Terry Mohajir, but Terry Mohajir is echoing exactly what we've been saying.
I am not using that rah-rah.
Hey, well, look. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I think, looking back, we were talking about this off air. And Bryson, you hinted at this. The chemistry of this year's team is off because I think, and I think several of us think, they were not expecting Darius Perry and Brandon Mahan to return, and then they did. Yeah. And that kind of threw off the
Rotation.
the post Taco, BJ, Aubrey transitionary period. Those guys were transitionary players. And the reason we know they were transitionary players is because they came here from the transfer portal. Mayhem came here from Texas A&M, and Perry came from Louisville, right? So, they weren't developmental players. The core player in this roster now, Kyle Nash, is Darius Johnson.
Yeah.
This is who they're building around now, right?
As they should be too, I guess, at this point.
Yeah. So, I think that, record-wise, UCF actually turned out better than they probably would have otherwise.
The problem was the expectations got a little out of control.
Yeah, I think everyone started talking about, and listen, we're guilty of this because we tooted that horn too.
Yeah, you
guys talked about the depth of the roster, right? Which, on paper, it was a really deep roster because we weren't expecting your leading scorer and your top point guard to come back the following year, but they did.
But remember,
it threw the chemistry off. It's like the old the Isaiah Thomas to Bill Simmons quote about the secret of basketball is it's not about basketball. The pieces didn't fit, and you said that many times, Eric.
Yeah, they didn't fit.
It didn't work.
And who'd been buying into the hype were the coaches in the American. They picked them 5th, and they weren't that far off. They were a game or two away. We discussed it.
One game away
in that spot. Everybody else had them going to the tournament and stuff. And look, I'm not saying that's what you shoot for. They had opportunities, but the margin for error is very thin, and it just didn't work out. And I get everybody's disappointed. They're disappointed. It doesn't mean you crumble the program and get rid of everybody after a disappointing season, that didn't work out to their finished goal. Because if that was the case, we'd be firing coaches every year in every sport. For goodness, I mean, start with the Dolphins. We should fire them every year, which is not a bad idea. But
the Dolphins have been doing that to this point. Yeah, Bryson, you had a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, I just it's like bouncing off what you guys are saying. It's like the point here is that now that this last season is done, Perry and Mahan are now gone. Darin Green's gone too, and it stinks. You wish you could have had him for another year, but I think what his departure along with Perry and Mahan's does is that it gives Dawkins finally a chance to rejuvenate. Because like you said, it wasn't planned that Perry and Mahan were going to come back. And and unlike with softball, who I think dealt with the extra COVID year a lot better, the basketball team, there was just too much clash with the new people that were coming in and the people that the unplanned returnees because of the COVID year. So now that Dawkins is finally able to have that rebuild, I think having that rebuild will be very necessary for him. And ultimately, I think it will be good for the program in the long run because of, everyone that's coming in. You have the sophomore Darius Johnson, the Hendrick twins, the PJ Edwards. Over the long haul, I think this will be better for the program. So
I think
that's fair.
Here's the thing we have to realize, and I think Drew, I'm going to want to bring in Drew on this, Drew, because I think Drew, you and I have been on.
All right, we'll let Drew parachute in here because we're going to talk about other Timo stuff as well. But go ahead.
I prefer the term kamikaze in.
Well, because Drew, here's the point. I think you and I have been on the same page, and this applies to both men's and women's basketball. The way it's set up right now, with all the financial stuff with UCF, with the uncertain future about when they're moving to the Big 12, and actually, Terry mentions that in the article, they're hoping for a deal, maybe have some resolution of some sort by May. But they're going to have to spend some money to get out of here, to get to the Big 12. Not to mention the increases of finances that comes with going to the Big 12. Not to mention there's other programs on campus that are going to need stuff too. To me, right now, UCF, you need your basketball team to be efficient. And what I mean by that, you can't be reckless in spending right now. You just can't.
Good point.
And unfortunately, I think UCF needs, look, I mean, it's been well discussed. UCF basketball travels commercial for the non-conference, for most of non-conference. And you might say, well, that's not a big deal. Let me tell you this. In the SEC and the other major conferences, baseball and softball are now starting to charter. That's how far behind we are right now. That matters to recruits. Not to mention, we're not even getting into the facility aspect of it, but the point is, Johnny Dawkins, under the economics that UCF basketball has, under the limitations they has to work with, has been successful. Just like what Coach Abe did at women's basketball was successful. But I think UCF's approach to basketball is similar to what the Tampa Bay Rays do in Major League Baseball, which is not spend a ton of money, but just hope to develop internally and being successful with an efficient profit. We cannot match the Memphises, the Kansas, the Oklahoma States, the Dukes. You can't. You cannot compete with that because the majority of the finances are going towards football, and that's where the majority of the fans want to happen too, by the way. Let's not act like there's a ton of basketball fans clamoring. There's more. If you ask a fan, hey, are you willing to give up football money and put it over to basketball? I think the majority of UCF fans would say no.
No,
I
I
totally
think
agree.
100% right.
Essentially, I think you should say is be like St. Peter's. You take what you take a program that is a little.
From personal experience, you do not want to be like St. Peter's.
Well,
They're the definition of a poverty program when it comes to their investments.
Yes, their basketball budget was $250,000 last year. The entire basketball.
I'm not
budget.
saying it's a one-to-one comparison. What I'm saying is that
it-
the idea is that it's a program that is relatively underfunded compared to the others, and that they win by getting together players that work together very well, that work together as a unit that can punch above their weight when it comes.
Here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that. In basketball, you can have those one-hit wonders. I don't think it's a fair comparison. Because UCF's not looking for a one-hit wonder. UCF's looking for consistency. And you're actually getting it out of Johnny Dawkins. You've had one losing season out of his entire time here, and he's been here 6 years, 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he's been here 6 seasons. So he's been here a while. So you want consistency, and that consistent level right now is a little bit lower than. And obviously, we all want more, but the thing is, you can only get so much.
Here's the thing. Here's why you cannot compare a school like St. Peter's to a school like UCF, amongst many other reasons. All right, but number one is, all the guys who went to St. Peter's, that's where they're going, right? They're not. They have no NBA prospects. They have no pro prospects. When you're UCF and you're in the American and heading into the Big 12, the expectation is that the kind of talent that you can get is at the very least going to be NBA, close to NBA ready, if not definitely professional ready. And UCF has been producing professional talent for quite some time now. So it's a much different calculation of how you assemble a roster if you're UCF compared to St. Peter's. It just is.
St. Peter's plays a low competition.
St. Peter's is traditionally in the lower quarter of the MAAC. All right,
yeah,
so
they
made a magical run in their conference tournament. They weren't even the regular season champion.
They got it,
and it's a random thing. It pops up. It's a fluke.
Right. Yeah, Florida Gulf Coast had their run out of the Atlantic Sun.
Welcome to single elimination life, gentlemen.
Yeah,
but here's the other difference. Those schools are basketball schools. They don't have football to worry about. That's what I'm saying. It's hard to be good at both football and basketball. It's not easy. Somebody has to take a back seat there, unless you're in the SEC. You have a ton of money. But even in the SEC, they take a back seat to football, except for Kentucky, where football takes a back seat to basketball. That's the thing. It's not easy to juggle both because to add more money to basketball, it's got to come out of somewhere, and it's probably going to come out of football, which is the revenue maker at UCF.
Well, yeah, even Big Ten schools, don't have the consistent runs. Like Michigan football school, basketball has had runs, but they are not the every year team like a Kentucky.
Ohio State. Right?
Ohio State. That's actually worse. That's actually a better example. I specifically avoided that because Kyle would make some stupid remarks.
Of late, Indiana.
But they're actually a better
Purdue.
example. Ohio State, their football program has been top notch on a multi-year level. Their basketball program has been kind of very inconsistent, up and down for decades. I mean, you got.
Well, Miami. Look at Miami. Miami just got to their first Elite Eight ever. Jim Larrañaga had missed the last 4 NCAA tournaments at Miami. Leonard Hamilton missed the NCAA tournament his first 7 years at Florida State.
Can you really call Miami a football school now?
Ooh, trust me, they care.
Oh no.
I would argue their basketball's number 3 in that campus behind football. Baseball. And same thing at FSU. That's my point. It's just not easy, man. It's not easy at UCF basketball. And I think we're people just have to accept that. Like, you look at the UCF basketball history, They were the
Terrible.
worst program in the 80s, college basketball. Not even close. Awful. Like it you would have been better off not existing in the 80s. That was how bad.
I'll posit you this. Anyone want to care to guess what Johnny Dawkins' winning percentage is at UCF?
Isn't it like 692 or something like some of that range?
Kyle?
I would have said 630 something, 637.
Bryson?
I'll be optimistic and go 68-ish.
Eric?
59, right? 59?
65.3%.
Oh, there you go.
That is higher than anyone else in the history of the school, not named Torchy Clark. And Torchy Clark never coached UCF at the Division I level.
I think that brings back the fact that fans have developed this expectation of excellence, yet UCF does not have a standard of excellence. They don't have a history. Kirk Spiraw took a few teams to the NCAA tournament. It's because someone had to in a low major tax /
And to his credit, he did a great job with cleaning a building that was a capacity of 1,000.
Yeah, it was called the Garage for a reason. I mean, you could hear the person on the opposite corner of the arena.
Why it's now a volleyball court. I mean,
you go, look at the Donnie Jones era. He had 3 decent years and 3 horrible years. And so when you look at that, that's your Division I history right there, pretty much, of UCF. You have a little bit in, the early 90s, but I mean, it was really Kirk, Donnie, and Johnny. That's it. So, I mean, you don't have same thing with women's basketball. There's no history of success. I mean, you look
Abe is the history. We just had it.
Yeah, no, but
There's even less history of success in women's basketball than there is in men's.
With Gail Striegler and Joy Williams. I mean, you look at that and there's nothing there. I mean, you win the Atlantic Sun, it's because somebody has to. It's not because you're really good. It's that's a low major conference.
But what do you? But Drew, and I don't subscribe to this. I'm playing devil's advocate here. What do you say to the fans who keep saying, "Well, what's wrong with having high expectations?"
You play the lottery hoping you win.
You set
but
yourself
you really
up to
expect
be
to win.
Where you set yourself up to be miserable at the end.
Yeah, you're going to be miserable.
Right.
Most times when you set up expectations, it's not going to be met. I mean,
reminds me of that Dean Smith quote about how if you make everything a life or death situation, you're going to be dead a lot.
Well, it's no different than the percentage of the audience that expects football to go undefeated every year, and when they lose a couple games or 3, it's considered
the end of the world.
Right, it's the end of the world.
The hater fans, yes.
Yeah, so I mean that's no different. And in fairness,
their life must be miserable at that
And let's
point.
make this clear: this is not just a UCF. I mean, this is across the board in a lot of fan bases. This is not just a UCF thing either.
Well, wait, Eric, they call themselves fanatics. That's what fans are short for.
There you go. So
not wrong.
It's pretty interesting there. So yeah, it is what it is.
Is that a shot fired? I think that was a shot fired at Eric.
Oh, it was directly at me, I'm sure.
No, not at all. That was more in general. But I had
generic.
to do the bouncing around
generic.
thing.
You just want to make an impression there.
Because listen, if it was a shot at me, he'd be glad to tell you.
If it was a shot at Kyle, I would say no. Kyle has reasonable expectations. He doesn't expect the world to be handed him on a platter. It's been smacked in his face enough times to know that's not how it works.
The problem is, and by the way, media is just as to blame for this too. Columnists in particular, if they don't meet their expectations, well, what went wrong? And nobody bothers to look at the full picture and say, well, what happened? Why didn't they get to where they needed to get to? Was it they had injuries? Was it because certain players didn't play to their level? Was it a coaching thing? Everybody just wants to just cut to the chase. If you don't make the tournament, you suck. And it just doesn't. It's not going. Every year is not going to be your year. I hate to break it to you.
And it's not always the coach's fault. Take basketball, for instance. Basketball, coach can't make you make the shot. They can't make you make the pass. They can try to give you strategy and try to develop as much as they can. But in the end, the players play. And the coaches.
Well, and here's the thing. So Johnny Dawkins won 65%. If you want, even if hypothetically you make a move, there's no guarantees you're going to do better. You could actually go worse. You could go way worse.
Not only that, but
in fact, it's a higher probability you're going to go worse. In fact, it's a higher probability.
Flash green when you're talking about wanting to move on from a coaching staff. It's as we know, that's easier said than done.
Well, yeah, especially
very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, let's get down to brass tacks on that, right? You would have to pay a buyout, right?
You have to pay a buyout.
Well,
if those crazy fans got what they wanted, you'd
Which
have
is
to pay the buyout to Johnny
50%
Dawkins
of the remaining contract, which I
Right.
believe is right now
through
is
2025. You'd then have to pay a buyout to whoever it is you're going to get, and you're going to be paying 2 coaches.
Yeah.
So,
well, you just saw the example of what was going to take to keep Abe. It was going to be a lot. And if I ask the fans, hey, do you want to keep that at the price of spending money out of football's pocket? A lot of would probably say no.
I'm gonna make for you guys it's not unpopular, but for the fans it's gonna be unpopular. It's a good thing Abe left and did not take the counteroffer.
From a financial standpoint.
From a financial
Economics,
standpoint,
yep.
UCF is better
from
off.
UCF's financial standpoint,
They got to pay the bills. If you can't afford, if you outkick your coverage financially, you're in trouble. UCF
that's the point that you made in your column too, Drew.
Yeah, which should be dropping probably tomorrow morning or at some point.
Thursday morning for those that are listening. We always we don't want to confuse you. It'll be a Thursday.
Yeah, it's an article that hasn't quite dropped yet. It's going to, but it's talking about UCF being having to work with tight economics. And here's the truth. Whatever the American decides as far as a buyout goes, it's going to be at least $10 million because that's what the baseline buyout is. So UCF has to scrape it together. Right now, last time we heard it was somewhere in the $30 to $35 million range. It may come down a bit, but right now, that's still a lot of cheese. UCF has to get that. UCF's been working to try and scrape together all they can. One, they get the benefit of the buyout with Georgia. They hired, Messer at affordable rate. They didn't have to basically, double the salary to hold on to Abe, which would have been a financial drain in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, you want to keep her, you want the winning, but here's the truth: UCF couldn't afford her. They tried the best they could.
Georgia was
going to outbid her no matter what.
No matter what, and there was no way UCF was going to be able.
It's a better job. It's a better job right now.
It's a better job. I mean, she moved up. Great. That's a sign that UCF can help develop coaches into the next level, because a coach leaving for another school is both not only just a benefit for the coach that shows that they can do it, but it's also to show that the school has helped them develop. And you want that success because that success can breed further success. It makes the job a little more attractive that coaches want to go. If you fire a coach that has, out of 6 years, 5 winning seasons, and you fire him, that's going to make candidates think twice.
Correct.
About coming.
Yeah, good point.
There's some outside damage that could happen there. That perspective matters.
Especially given where UCF is in the spending ladder going into the Big 12, which we have discussed at length on this show and on the site, and it's not a good situation right here. One thing I did want to get your word on too, Drew, while we're working on this, and you were talking about Terry, some of the decisions that Terry Mohajir is going to have to make financially. He did tell the Orlando Sentinel, Matt Rochelle, that they are working through it, quote unquote, in terms of the AAC exit, and they hope something gets worked out by May. Good luck. I mean, it
makes sense. It
makes sense. It makes sense. Because the fiscal year
sound very ringing.
The fiscal year resets on July 1st.
Yeah.
So, and he also said that Big 12 will play 9 football conference games. So future games against USF probably will not happen.
Oh, we'll miss our scrimmages.
This is smart for 2 reasons. One, this improves the amount of inventory that can be used in television negotiations by it being known now. I guarantee you
that's an underrated point that you're making there about inventory for television.
That's huge.
In the Big 12. That's more games you can sell to the networks. That's massive. And I'll tell you the truth. With Bob Bowlesby announcing that he's hanging it up,
I think that was a planned move to help rebuild relations with ESPN.
Yep.
People are like, he helped navigate the conference for this. He's done a great job. Look, he managed that well from a bring in new team standpoint. He burned it all with how he went public with his issues.
Yeah, when he went on a bender with Dennis Dodd that one night.
I mean, he napalm relationships. He had to go. if you want ESPN to play.
It's a good first step
Mark
for the league.
Magnuson is going to want to deal with that.
Right.
I mean, come on. This was a forced move, probably behind the scenes. It had to happen. But I would love to see a guy like an Oliver Luck be brought in as the new commissioner. He has commissioner experience.
Oliver Luck would be
director. I mean, he's done it.
He would be
all.
great.
He would be a great guy, and he knows how to sell. I would love to see it. Obviously, that should happen as far as finding a new commissioner, probably sooner
days.
rather than later. They're pushing hard. I think they had a 90-day window.
Yep.
They wanted to figure it out. Now, here's the thing. UCF technically does not have a vote in this. They're not a member of the conference.
Sure.
They may say, hey, what do you think? But the truth is they don't have a vote. So I know some people got upset with some of the names that were kicking around on some site I never heard of. But the truth is UCF doesn't have a voice, a legit voice in this. They may have a back end voice, but not a legit.
They're a new member. Yeah, right.
It's let's take it for what it is. I don't think the remaining 8, who are probably the ones who are going to decide this, are going to make a bad move. I think they're gonna balance this out.
Let's be honest. They're going to be in consultation. The 4 new schools are going to be heavily consulted. I got news for you. They're going to listen to UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU a heck of a lot more than they're going to listen to Oklahoma and Texas.
Well, they're not going to listen to Oklahoma and Texas at all because they don't matter. But the truth is, they don't have a vote because they're not members.
Right.
And until you're a member, you're not a member. Weird things happen.
No, you're right. No, that's a valid point. And look, the incumbents want to have a bigger say on things, so this is their opportunity to do that.
At this point, they have all the say.
Exactly. But let's talk about the 9-game conference schedule. What that means is 3 non-conference games, and the reason why there's no room for USF is you're probably going to want to have a marquee game on one of those 3 non-conference games. You're probably going to have an FCS type of game, home game, right? Of some sorts. There's just no room, and quite frankly, South Florida offers nothing in football. There's nothing to gain.
That does offer you. It does offer you. The way I see this, and looking at
game.
other,
it becomes
looking
a
at other
conference game.
Okay, but looking at other schools who play 9 conference games, they play 1 FCS cupcake, they play 1 marquee, also Power 5 school, and then they play 1 G5 school, basically at home. Right.
Now, it depends.
That's like Oklahoma State playing Tulsa.
But that's a home and home. That's a home and home series. So they're giving Tulsa a fair shake on that contract with Oklahoma State. I actually like the fact that they view Tulsa as legitimate, unlike some larger schools here in Florida don't consider the other schools legitimate. But the truth is, UCF's looking for bigger things. But as we know, the away team or the home team, their television conference or their television contract is the one that carries. So if UCF had 8 games, that maybe potentially 2 out of conference games, there's lost inventory. So this guarantees another game that's within the conference. It's within the family. It becomes as you said, Jeff, sellable inventory. Yeah. And when the value of the Big 12 is questionable right now, you need as much there to sell as possible. Right. Plus the 9 games, which is what the Big 12 currently does. It means there's no disruption for the remaining 8. And it means, BYU is going to have more work, but it means less buyouts needed, for
correct.
The incoming schools.
I will say this, when you look at UCF's future schedules, 2023, they have 3 games scheduled: Kent State, at Boise State, and BYU, who would be in the conference. Obviously, it's an open question as to whether or not UCF and BYU are conference mates in 2023. That could open up a slot. We don't know.
That also could end up being used as a non-conference game, too. It's not unprecedented.
Fair point. 2024, UCF is scheduled to play at BYU on August the 31st.
That game's probably gone.
Unless they keep that as your big opener for both. Right?
That
I don't
could
think
be,
they're going to do 2.
But then that would open up another non-conference game, because the other non-conference games they have scheduled are Liberty and then at Florida October the 5th.
Right, so you're going to play an FCS game there. You're going to fill that out with an FCS
so
game.
So 2025, Maryland at Maryland, FAU, North Carolina.
That one's set.
Yep.
Yeah, that one's set. 2027, North Carolina. 2028, Maryland. 2030, Florida. 2033, Florida. There's still a lot of wiggle room after 2025 to put to put at least 2 other schools. So, but then you were talking about Drew. South Florida's schedule's already laid out.
Right, their schedule's full till I beat 2027. But don't be surprised if UCF kicks some of those games down the road, so that they can put an FCS team on the schedule.
Agreed.
So that they can get that
and
that kind of freebie game in there.
I agree. And I think if an opportunity presents itself where they play a Miami, either a home and home or in a neutral site or at Orlando with Florida Citrus Sports, I think they'll make room for something like that as an example.
The neutral site game only works if UCF can make at least as much as they would make in a home game. I think that's what they said. They have to at least be made whole on that. If not, it's not worth their time.
I mean, can't we just replace the former UCF USF games with them playing UConn? I think that's an appropriate competition level.
Oh my God.
No, that needs to go away and never come
I will say one thing about the 9-game conference schedule that I'm not a fan of is you have an uneven number between home and away games. And I know that they make up for that year over year, but every year someone's at an advantage and every year someone's at a disadvantage. It's the only thing that I'm not a fan of on that.
I mean, it's, you know, there's no satisfying everyone. This is really just, you know, the best, you know, situation for the conference as far as from a financial standpoint to sell themselves is to have as many games as possible. I don't blame them on that. And you don't want to screw up the schedules for the remaining 8, because you change it to 8 in 2023, you have 8 schools that are now desperately trying to find a game.
Yeah.
That's not, as you know, that's not a lot of time to schedule a game. Now we've seen it work, but most of the schools have already scheduled games. Yeah.
Good point.
So
bye USF. Hey, listen, USF, enjoy FAU and that, you know, whatever you guys want to call it on Black Friday. Enjoy it. I mean, you know, that'll be great. I mean, in front of 10 people, maybe. It'll be cool.
Here's the question. Here's the question for you guys. Which stadium sells more? Is it going to be the USF at FAU game or the FAU game at USF? And I have a feeling that the Boca side will have higher attendance.
The Willie Taggart Bowl, baby. Come on. That's a great
I hate saying this for South Florida. Drew, I think you're right. Yeah. That's a sellout in Boca, because you're gonna have South Florida graduates who live in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach going to that game.
I was at that game in 19. That's actually not a bad stadium either.
I know.
It really isn't. I really like it.
FAU's not good. FAU doesn't have a lot of Tampa graduates. You know,
I actually went there. I love that I talk about this because I actually saw Dylan Gabriel first start at FAU back in 2019. I visited there with my roommate because my roommate used to live in Boca. It is quite the good stadium. So I can.
That game was notorious though for trouble getting into it. Right? Is that right?
Oh, it was awful. Oh God, it was horrendous. And FAU came out and flat out apologized, saying, "You know what? We were not prepared. We screwed up."
Well, they won't have that problem with USF comes to town.
They'll bring 10 fans and their marching band.
We're gonna take a break here in a little bit, but and we're gonna get to softball, baseball, and various other things with Bryson Turner here. But once again, we wanted to thank Drew, Statboy Drew, on Twitter, and wanted to thank Kyle Nash, the SOTG, on Twitter for the student of the game. Kyle will be covering the spring game from the press box, which will not be viewed on video streaming. So you better follow the SOTG right now and UCF Banneret _SBN, because we are the link to the outside world.
Listen, Kyle, I'm calling the game on ESPN Plus for softball. I'm just going to quote your tweets about how the spring game went. That just so you know.
Listen, I would love any and all of that support. And while I am the student of the game, make sure you get yourself educated on fiscal matters of the college and the programs from Andrew Klukoff on blackgoldbanneret.com as well. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Shameless plug here.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you as always. Stick around. We'll be right back with Bryson to talk softball, baseball, and plenty more when we return. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you. We've cleared out the queue, and we've got Bryson Turner back with us all to ourselves here on the show to talk about softball, baseball, tennis. We got some track and field news we got to talk about. But let's start, Eric Lopez, with your UCF softball team. The roll continues, Elo. 34-10. They're off to a 6-0 start in conference play after they took they did exactly what they had to do at home against Memphis. They held them scoreless for the entire 3-game series. And I think you said, Eric, what was that, the third time that's happened in school history?
Yeah, third time ever they've had a 3-game series where they shut out the opponent all 3 games. Last year in non-conference, they did it in Boca against FAU. And then in 2015 in conference in the American, UCF did that with East Carolina. And only gave up 4 hits that weekend. That was Mackenzie Otis and Shelby Turnier who threw her no-hitter there. So impressive performances from Gianna Mancha and Kamal Woodall continue to impress. Caitlin Felton getting the ball on Sunday was magnificent in her first American Conference start. It was a business-like performance for the team. Their offense was efficient. They played good defense, and they took care of Memphis. And they're going to have to do the same thing this weekend against East Carolina, who's a little better than Memphis, has more firepower offensively. But UCF right now, 6-0 in the American, the only team undefeated in the league. That's what they got to do. Keep winning. You got to keep winning. They keep moving up the rankings. They're 20th in the ESPN poll. They dropped in the RPI from 11 to 13 because, math sucks, basically. And they basically get punished for being forced to play Memphis. So that was disappointing. But they can't worry about that stuff. What you got to worry about right now is taking care of East Carolina, focus on East Carolina, and try to win a conference championship. And this team's right now in a good rhythm and in a good playing at a very high level.
6-0 in the conference. I'm looking at the standings right now. Houston's at 7-1-1. Wichita's at 4-2. USF's at 5-4, and then it basically all drops off after that. Who are you keeping your eye on right now?
Well, Houston and Wichita State will play this weekend in Houston. We'll find out more about Houston. Wichita State's the defending champions. UCF will end the regular season at Wichita State, which is is a bandbox. It's like Coors Field, only smaller, which is bad. But Houston's tough too. That's a long-time rivals. UCF's got to go to Houston. So that's why I'm saying they need to take care of East Carolina this weekend because it's going to get tougher with Houston on the road and Wichita State in the regular season on the road for them. And, it's this RPI thing with the hosting. They're in the mix to host, but unfortunately, because they're not in the SEC and they're not in the Big 12 yet, they have to be close to perfect to have a shot to host. And that may not even be good enough. Because, by the way, folks, we talked in the last segment about the finances and the issues. Softball needs a little bit of a facelift in the stadium. If you've been there, you kind of know what I'm talking about. So, it's going to be interesting. They got to take care of East Carolina. This is a group that I think will. But, you have one slip-up or two, man, and you get hit. And these teams are going to gun for UCF. So, it'll be interesting how they handle this and this try to kind of this tightrope that they have to in conference.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday is the schedule for the series. 6 p.m., and then 2 p.m.
Right, all on ESPN Plus. They will be televised. You will hear this voice.
You and Francesca, right?
No, it'll be Jamie
Francesca's
Low-Price.
off this week. Okay.
She's off. It's Jamie Low-Price, a former Aggie great, will be joining me on Thursday, Friday, and then solo there. And then, we'll figure it out on Saturday there with with everything going on campus. We'll make it. We'll just hope to have enough bodies to cover to have 3 sporting events on campus. But hopefully, I know this. It'll be 80s night on Thursday, 90s night on Friday, 2000s night on Saturday. If you're into music, so hey.
Real quick, Jada Cody watch. Where are we at right now? She's at 56 runs batted in.
56, 10 away from Stephanie Best for the school record. Stephanie had 66. In 2003, 56 still leads the country in RBIs for Jada Cody, and she's doing well. She bounced back, had a strong series against Memphis, so that's going well. But Kennedy Searcy, Janisha Rowe in front of her keeps getting on base. That's the key for this offense. Is those two have to set the table for her and Shannon Doherty, and then Ashley Griffin, who's coming on. So that's the positives for this team. And only got 6 home games left, believe it or not. 6. That's it.
Boy, that happened real quick, didn't it?
Yep.
Jeez,
you mentioned about the team being perfect. I mean, they shut out Memphis the entire series. Is that not perfect enough?
Not to the RPI, apparently, because we dropped 2 spots.
I mean, Do we have to run rule every single game?
No, I mean
it's based on strength of schedule, right?
Yeah,
and Memphis is Memphis is an inferior opponent, and you can maintain to some extent, in the RPI your level based on beating an inferior opponent, but just due to their strength of schedule, it's going to drop you a little bit at the very least.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's going to happen. It could happen again. You still got East Carolina, Tulsa on the schedule, so we won't have this problem once we get to the Big 12, whenever that is, because everybody in the Big 12, even the bad teams, quote unquote, are in the top 100. That's the big difference.
Over to baseball, UCF 5-1 in conference play to start off after winning 2 of 3 in Memphis. They're 21-12 overall, so tied with Tulane for first place in the conference right now. In what was a bizarre at times weekend, Bryson Turner. UCF lost the first game 6-1, and concern after that game. Is that right?
A little bit. Let me go ahead and first set the scene for you. First of all, ESPN Plus was not broadcasting games 1 and 2. What was it with that?
That's because that's because Memphis is broke.
So that part was a little bit annoying, but it is what it is.
Financial issues.
But the concern with that is Connor Stain. Connor Stain exited only after 2 innings, and from what Mark Daniels on the radio broadcast said, it was because of a blister and lower back problems. Now, Connor Stain actually did mention after his appearance in USF that he had a blister on his middle finger that they were working with, and that he could have he wanted to go another inning in that game, but they took him out. So from what I understand, it was a cold day the night that he started.
It was in the 40s. Jeff, you know this from having back issues. Cold weather,
everything locks up.
Yeah. So between the blister and Connor still kind of coming off of the back spasms, playing in cold weather just didn't really suit him that well. So we ended up having a shortened start. I would just say, let's see what happens when he starts this weekend, and we'll see where he is. In the end, though, unfortunately, William Saxton did not have the best pitching performance, and also they were facing Memphis's ace in Landon Gartman, who was one of the better pitchers in the conference. So they have their first conference loss. It is what it is. The good news is that Memphis isn't that very deep in the pitching department, and the offense was able to go all over them in games 2 and 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about that game too. UCF jumped out to a 7-0 lead. Alex Freeland, 4 for 5, 5 runs batted in, had 2 home runs in the ball game plus an RBI double. And Hunter Patterson only went 2 innings himself in this game, but still managed to UCF was able to take advantage of the fact that there was a run rule in effect, and they run ruled Memphis 13-3-7 in the second game.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Hunter Patterson, this is basically just like what happened when Connor Stain coming back from injury, just having a very, limited pitching appearance just to get him back into the swing of things. And by the looks of it, it was okay for coming off of injury. So I would say, let's see what happens this weekend. Ben Vespi pitched a majority of the game. Great job out of him, and Chase Santala with the closer. But the biggest thing is the offense. I mean, we talked about the offensive concerns with this team, and to see them just go absolute ham on this Memphis team was certainly nice to see. And Alex Freeland going 4 for 5 with the 2 homers, just absolutely well done, and certainly something that we would like to see. Also, freshman Ryan Taylor getting some time at catcher. That's a name we've been picking up a lot this weekend.
Which takes us to Sunday.
Oh boy, here we go.
We broke it down on video on Black Gold Banneret, and in case you were living under a rock and missed what happened on Sunday on social media, so UCF jumped out to what we thought was a 5-0 lead in the first inning on an Andrew Sundin 3-run homer with 2 on. UCF was already up 2-0, and then Memphis decides to check the bat, at which point the umpire crew initially decided that Andrew Sundin had too much pine tar on his bat, and he was called out, which led to an argument from Greg Lovelady, which led to some words being exchanged between Lovelady and the Memphis dugout, which led to Lovelady getting ejected, which led to the Memphis pitcher getting ejected, which led to the bat being brought downstairs and then they actually measured it, and then they reinstated the home run. Couldn't undo all the ejections after that. That happened because the home run got wiped. But that made it 5-0. UCF ended up scoring a 10 spot in the first. Bryson, 15-6. I know the final, but this is just a bizarre incident. And what was the sort of the fallout from what happened in the first inning of that game?
Well, first of all, I'd like to credit how far this sport has come, where we don't have to wait days for a reversal like it happened in 1983 with George Brett. So that
was because that game was played under protest, which Lovelady was going to do. If the home run did not stand. But I'm sorry, go ahead, carry on.
So credit to the umpires for going back and reversing the decision. Great job. By the way, great job for Andrew Sundin. He's had a hit in his past 10 starts. Absolutely amazing for a true freshman. But right after that happened, the very first at bat, Ryan Taylor went and hit a solo home run in the left center field, and they went on to go up 10-0 after the first inning. Now Memphis was able to battle back and making it 10-6 in the third. So is what it is there. But that was with David Litchfield. After that, David Litchfield was pulled from the game. And between Zach Hunsaker, Kyle Kramer, Rudy Gomez, and Dama Castellano, the relievers gave up only 2 hits for the whole rest of the game. And that helped UCF get the win. They put some insurance ones. Alex Freeland got a 2-run RBI single. Seriously, Alex Freeland, definitely the player of the series right there. Just offensive powerhouse this time.
Fantastic.
And then Pablo Ruiz got a homer. First time he homered since back in the beginning of the season against Siena. So nice job for him. So, I mean, look, we talked about this offense and the concerns we had and the concerns that we've had with it. It's production like this that I think shows that the talent is there. I just think the issue is when it goes up against a very good pitching staff, that's when we got to get a little bit worried. So as far as baseline offensive performance goes, this shows us that this team can perform.
Well, they proved it at Jacksonville last night too. Got the win 6-1 there. And now comes the big series that, well, at least we thought was going to be a pretty big series. I think still is, because we're still early in the conference season, against ECU, who's off to a 4-2 start. East Carolina, the runaway preseason favorite in the American, but UCF has these 3 games at home this weekend. This is going to be a massive, real gut check series for UCF now, because I'm looking at the RPI, Bryson, and even despite those wins, UCF right now is at 81 in the RPI, ECU's at 77. What I'm looking at here is this is looking like a pretty down year for the American. Right now, Tulane is
it is
the top team in the RPI. Like you were saying, Eric, Tulane right now 50th is the top American Athletic Conference team in the RPI in baseball. And UCF doesn't play them until later on, end of April. So, and again, they have them at home.
It's a down year, right? The league's, I think, 8th or 9th now rated our conference. They're usually top 5. So.
But now here's a chance. But the bottom line is, okay, you look at the conference standings. UCF and Tulane are tied right now. This is a chance with ECU 1 game behind you, Bryson, to just kind of be rid of them for once and for all here, right? Just knock them out of the race.
You are right about that, and we have a similar situation with Memphis, where I think that their Friday starter is going to have some problems, and then it's going to be up to the offenses for the second 2 games. Jake Kuchmaner has the 9th.
That's Jeff's guy. That's your guy, Jeff.
Yeah, Jake Kuchmaner, the brother of Mackenzie Kuchmaner, the former UCF libero. Yeah.
So there's him, but there's also their relief pitcher Carter Spivey, who has the 6th lowest ERA in the conference. And I would say the relief pitching for ECU has been solid. So I think that's something they definitely want to keep an eye on the middle of the game offensively. So their main leader there is Lane Hoover, who has the 7th highest batting average in the conference. I mean, look, the Pirates are coming in here with the 3rd lowest ERA, but the 2nd lowest batting average. So the big thing, this is another test for UCF's offense, essentially, because if the pitching we've seen can perform well, and against a team that hasn't really been batting as well as ECU has been, that takes care of itself, especially at home. The big thing is going to be, will the bats show up? Because I think that will be the key difference. And luckily, UCF has been kind of getting better at that. Ben McCabe is on a 9-game hitting streak right now since he started playing first base. And what's more, and I find interesting, is that in the Jacksonville game, Andrew Sundin was the starting DH. They kept his bat in the lineup, even though he was behind the plate. And Riley Vaughn made his first appearance after being injured.
He's raking right now.
So yeah, Sundin, absolutely great. And so I think that now that we have some more consistent bats on the team, Lex Bodeker's been hitting very well as well. I think that as long as they hold up, then I think we could be in for some winnable games against ECU this week.
I think so. That's also why Coach Lovelady was very careful with Connor Stain and Hunter Patterson this past weekend.
Right. I mean, that's going to be the key for them the rest of the year. If Connor Stain and Hunter Patterson are not healthy this year, they can't stay healthy. They're not going to be able to accomplish what they want to do. And this is a wide open league. It is worth pointing out, D1 Baseball, which is the source for college baseball, has East Carolina as one of the first 4 out. Despite the RPI. So baseball, to their credit, the baseball committee, I think, to their credit, they don't get married to one thing. They kind of do a lot of different stuff that, quite frankly, I like a lot better, and I wish a lot of the softball would do a lot of the stuff baseball does. But it's a big series. Cliff Godwin, I have tremendous respect, obviously, former UCF assistant many years back under Terry Rooney. He knows what he's doing. I wouldn't sell that offense short, especially if UCF's not healthy. We don't know Stain's status. We don't know Patterson's status for this weekend. You know, it's going to be a tough series. It's always a battle between those two teams, and I think the winner of this one probably takes a big step to perhaps, hopefully, challenging with Tulane for the American Conference title. I still think this league can get 2 bids in, but it's probably going to have to be some combination of the regular season champion and maybe a tournament champion, something like that.
Yeah. Thursday at 6, Friday at 6, Saturday at 2, every game on ESPN+. Plus. All right. Some track and field news, Bryson.
Yes. So this week it was a little more of a limited action. It was just the heptathletes this time. 4 heptathletes competing at the Hurricane Alumni Invite, I believe it was. And Brittany Floyd. Oh man. So Brittany goes, and in the second day of the event, she swept first place in the 3 events on day 2, which are the long jump, javelin throw, and 800-meter hurdles. And she ended up winning the whole thing and broke the program record for the highest scoring heptathlon. And that's a record that has stood since 2003, 19 years, when Jamie Pugh first did it. It's so old. There wasn't even a specific date. It just was 2003.
That was before you were born.
No, it was not.
No, I'm just kidding.
It was before my brother was born, but no. So Brittany Floyd does that. Absolute congratulations to her. It was also the 7th highest scoring heptathlon also in the country this season so far, if memory serves. Yes, that's right. And then what's more, Natalia Madison, the freshman, she picks up the bronze for the event and beats the freshman record, which was set by Holly Castles almost exactly a year prior to that. And then the 2 other athletes, Kennedy Reese and Holly Castles herself, both got new personal bests for the heptathlon. So Natalia Madison also came away with first place in the high jump event. So absolutely well done for these 4 athletes in Miami for the first outdoor heptathlon of the season.
All right, and that takes us to, last but not least, tennis. Right now I want to start with the men's tennis team, because even though they're 8-13, they are moving up the ITA rankings. They moved up from 49th to 46th. And as they get ready they have their season finale on Saturday against number 40 South Florida. And this could be the perfect sort of springboard for them as they get ready for the American Athletic Championships at Tulsa. Now they split their matches this weekend on the road, but they did win at Tulsa, who's number 40, before losing to Memphis. So what's the status right now with men's tennis?
So over on the men's tennis side, we still have 3 doubles pairs ranked with Hildebrand Bivell, Krone Bivell, and then Kronhe White. Trey Hildebrand fell in the singles rankings to 90, but I think that it's just one of those situations where Roddick just seems to have a better grip on the program late in the season. I think, the fact that, they're coming in with a 2-2 conference play, this is going to be for whether you get a winning or losing record in conference play. And I don't really know how to gauge this, because sometimes you just have a good or a bad day, and we'll see what happens. But I think the biggest thing is I feel like this will probably dictate their momentum going into the AAC championship, especially I think with the doubles players, because while I don't think a lot of the UCF, this UCF men's team has been very good with singles, the doubles play has been absolutely well done. And so I think that if the biggest success, at least for me, is that I think we could see some individual breakouts with the doubles pairs, and the momentum they can build with this War on I-4 home matchup will be key in helping set them up for that.
And last but not least, the women, 14-6, 2-0 in the conference. They've won 7 in a row now. They beat SMU, number 43, on the road in Dallas this past week on Friday. And then on Sunday, they turned around and won at Tulsa in a sweep, number 46 Tulsa. So as we look at the women's rankings, I'm sorry I didn't have these pulled up right away, but I should have. The NCAA Division I women's team rankings which just came out today, April the 13th, UCF is 18th in the country. So they also have one more regular season match on Saturday. This is at South Florida in Tampa before, again, they travel out to Tulsa for the American Championship. So Brian Kanyeko has to be pretty happy with where his team is right now, right, Bryson?
Oh, yes. He also is coming off of his 100th win as UCF's head coach after the first win of the weekend against Tulsa. So congratulations.
What day was that?
That was Friday.
And then Saturday we had Greg Lovelady's 300th at Memphis before he
milestones all over the place.
Yeah, he enjoyed that probably a little bit better than Sunday when he was trending all over the place.
Oh, yes.
He even said so on Mark Daniels' show. Did you see that? He's like, yeah.
So there's that. Also, Nandini Sharma picked up 2 singles play wins. She now has a 10 game winning streak for her in singles play. That's the 3rd longest in program history. And she's 3 wins away from second place. So Sharma has been just a lockdown at the number 6 court spot for UCF this season. Marie Mattel was also named the AAC Women's Tennis Player of the Week. So well done to her as well. And look, when you look at the individual rankings, the doubles pair of Mattel and Lashova are number 42. Marie is an individual is 94, and Evgenia Levashova is ranked number 105. This is while I think the individually, that is where the men's team is going to find success with individual players or pairs. This team, I think, is where you see the team is going to succeed. Because the team is able to pick each other up. And so when one falters, the other steps up. And when you have people like Nandini Sharma who are able to really anchor it, Sophia Biole and Marie Mattel, they've been really able to anchor it. So that way it's a lot safer, I guess in a sense. So I think so obviously they've been doing a great job locking down. They're undefeated in conference play. Granted, it's only 3 matches, but it is what it is. So I once again build momentum for the conference championship. And I think you just got to make sure that the team is good to go. We make sure that Nandini Sharma certainly remains the rock that she's been, and just make sure that you don't just trip at the finish line. This team itself has been very good this season. They just got to keep it going into the conference championship.
All right, we will see what both the tennis teams do against South Florida this weekend. It's Bryson Turner on Twitter is who you want to follow for all the latest, and he's got his latest nightcap up as well before we head into the weekend. So that'll do it for us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric, what are you doing on spring football? Oh, no, you're going to be at softball, obviously, getting ready for that.
That's right. I'll be at softball. Bryson's going to be at baseball. We got
Kyle's going to be at football.
Football. Yeah, you're going to be.
I'll be at football. Yep. Going to be a busy weekend. It's just. Is this the end of the equinox? Is this finally it?
It better be. I'm exhausted.
I know it's been wild, man, but what a time. We look forward to seeing you. Obviously, you can make sure you follow Kyle at the SOTG. Follow us collectively at UCF Banneret _SBN. Follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Drew at StatBoyDrew, Bryson at It's Bryson Turner, and yours truly at Jeff _Sharon on Twitter. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. If you don't subscribe to our podcast, please do. We're on Apple and Android. If you do subscribe to us, we thank you so much. Leave us a rating. Let us know how we're doing, as always. So, gentlemen, thank you once again, and thanks to you for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Enjoy the weekend. We will see you at the spring game on Saturday.